We are back on MorningLine talking traffic. With us this morning is Ron Shultis. He's with the Beacon Center. They're fresh out with a traffic reduction proposal in the wake of the failed traffic plan that was voted down here in Metro just a short while back. And, you know, I was asking him during the break with the plan that's come out. We're talking about some of the points on easing traffic. I mean, who's listening to this, or what can you do? Your proposal's good. Others will come up with it. But you said you're going to be meeting with the state?
Yep, we're going to be meeting with the State Department of Transportation relatively soon here, talking about some of our state-based ideas as well. And our hope is to start a conversation with the Metro government, with the council and the mayor's office.
I mean, do you send copies of this to the council? Or are you going
to? I know that they've seen it. The mayor's office has said that they're looking at it, and our hope is to work with them and find ways that, you know, we can work together on addressing this issue, because it is a problem.
Yeah, I would think some council members, at least in the short term, maybe not saying this is the cure-all, would look and see there's some things here that won't cost a lot that will improve traffic to some degree. Why wouldn't they get behind that? That's kind of my take. Let's take a call from Joe. Joe, good morning.
Good morning, Nick.
Hi, Joe.
Just listening to your gentleman and discuss some of the proposals. The only proposal I'd like to see is that whatever we do, it is not going to be outdated by the time we get it done. One of the biggest problems we got here, you got, I think, 3, 4 interstates coming through the downtown Nashville area.
Yeah.
That's causing one of the biggest problems is interstate commerce coming right through the center of town. Our interstate system is outdated and has been for quite a while. And it's beginning to show up now, more and more and more every day. You see tractor and trailer wrecks, backups with one little fender bender. So Nick said it best. You know, where he lives in Wilson County, he takes him a lot longer to get here than it did a few years ago. So whatever system we get, I just hope. I mean, the other proposal, by the time we got it built, it would have been outdated. I mean, look at Chicago. Theirs is above ground. New York's is below ground. Their systems have been in use since the early 1900s.
Oh yeah.
That's how far we are behind. So whatever it is, I just hope that it doesn't be outdated by the time we get it in place.
Yeah. All right, Joe, thank you. I mean, his point about the interstates is a good one, and there's one of the points you have on here, divert through freight travel on
That's right.
I-840. Now, Joe is probably talking about all the traffic that makes its way through here, but tractor trailers and all of that. So what would that plan be?
Well, I think Joe brings up a good point, and that's why all of our proposals were designed to be implemented in 1 to 2 years max. So that way they weren't going to be outdated by the time that they were installed. That was one of the issues with the light rail proposal. It was going to take 15 years, I think, to fully build the system. I mean, some people would argue light rail is outdated now, let alone in 15 years. I mean, the iPhone was barely invented 15 years ago. Think about how much our world has changed since that was created. But in terms of the through freight travel, there have been studies here done in Metro Nashville area that 2/3 of all the big rigs on the road here are not starting or ending inside the Nashville area.
Well, they stop at the truck stop that's right in town. I mean, you know, there is that really big is it a TA truck stop right there. I mean, that's a huge one. I mean, that may be one reason. Let's move the truck stop farther out. Now, who knows if they could move, but I mean, is that one reason they're coming through? I mean, why not? Why wouldn't they want to divert and go around the city and take 840 or something?
A lot of it has to do with being traveling as few miles as possible.
Okay.
That's how a lot of
trucks. It is a little longer. You're right.
It is a little longer. It's not terribly, about I think 25 miles or so. But what we're talking about is for that through freight travel, ones that are going from, let's say, Knoxville to Memphis, for example.
Yeah.
If they're approaching the city in the peak travel times like morning rush hour, what we would want to do is have them divert around 840, so that way the downtown inner loop area isn't being congested by additional big rigs that are just traveling through the area.
Oh, man, yeah.
And you know, that would probably help them in a lot of ways too, because they're not going to have to sit in that traffic and waste fuel time in a stop and go scenario. I don't know if you've ever been on 840, but it's usually wide open.
It is. And if you're leaving here in Nashville, and I do usually, if I'm caught in traffic around 5 o'clock heading out on the Interstate 40 here, just getting on next to the football stadium. And there are a ton of trucks there. And that's fine. The truckers are nice and all this, but I mean, it congests things. You pull the tractor trailers out of that equation when I get out at rush hour, and it's going to flow smoother. Only because it's just less volume.
Absolutely.
And these are big boys that take up a lot of space.
And obviously they have slower acceleration, so when you have stop and go problems, right, they're a little slower, obviously. Now, obviously, because 840 is only on the southern half of the city, not everybody would be able to use it.
What about completing that?
That's something that definitely should be looked at, but obviously that's a more long-term capital-intensive idea, and that's something that we wanted to stick away from. We wanted to look at quick fixes, things that could be done soon. But so, for example, if you're going from Chattanooga to Bowling Green, obviously this idea wouldn't work. But if you're going from Chattanooga to Memphis or Huntsville to Knoxville, this is a solution that could make a meaningful difference. And other cities do this already.
And how would you do that? Divert them? Would it basically signs? If you're a truck, you got to go off here, or you get ticketed, or what?
It could be a simple signage where you could even do an incentive base, where if you wanted to ride inside, there would be a toll where it would be free to divert around 840, or you could do it simply like Atlanta does, which is where there are signs mandating it, and that would be upon highway patrol to enforce it, maybe through wait stations or whatnot. So there are various different ways to do it, but what we're talking about is even just in the morning and afternoon rush hours. So just that
window there.
Just that window there where it would make a huge meaningful difference, because while Nashville traffic is getting worse by the day, it's not as terrible where there's gridlock at all times of the day like other cities. So it's just in those areas that we really need to make a difference.
Let's go to Ann. Ann, good morning.
Good morning.
Hi,
the
Ann.
growth in East Nashville has more than doubled, or probably more than that, in the last 5 years, with nothing being done to our infrastructure as far as roads go. The traffic on Cleveland, Douglas, Hart, and Broadmoor has become bumper to bumper, and as your guest says, this slows down emergency traffic, especially on roads like Douglas, where you have trains that stop for up to 30 minutes at a time. Nobody addressed the issue of roads when they approved all this construction and all this growth in East Nashville. Nobody seriously addressed East Nashville with these transit packages that failed. What has Beacon done to look into the traffic and the roads in East Nashville, and what can you propose that will help alleviate the bumper-to-bumper traffic on our cross streets between Gallatin Road and Dickerson Road, because our emergency vehicles are being slowed down, our traffic is bumper-to-bumper, we don't have turn lanes on some of these crossroads, and it is getting worse by the day because building permits are still being given and construction is still going on.
Great question as always, Ann. I appreciate it. All right, take a shot at that.
Sure. So Ann brings up a great point, and some of our ideas would talk about that. For example, the first one we mentioned, that adaptive traffic control system would help lights. Another one that she mentioned was the construction issue. One of the things that Nashville has is there are construction permits that allow businesses or hotels, whatever, residential, to close lanes and even full roads for very cheap. Costs only in the downtown area $100 to close a whole street for a week.
While they're doing construction? While
they're doing construction, and only $20 a day after that.
Really?
It's that small. So if you're a multi-million-dollar construction project, our office is on 4th Ave, and we've had the far left lane closed down since I started working there last year, because it's pennies.
Yeah,
it's
they
only
pay $100 every week, and it's nothing for them to keep it. Now, I guess, and that gets to one of the other points you have here on, I don't know if that fits under the category of corporate welfare handouts, but companies seeking to locate, and I've said this for a while now, you know, I understand bringing jobs, and I think you're a big fan of this. I don't know if you agree with me, but I'm done giving massive incentives trying to attract people to this city. If they need incentives to come here, then they can go somewhere else. This city's great as it is, but giving them massive breaks. But talk about what that point is in terms of corporate handouts and how that affects traffic.
Sure. One point I'll still make on the construction aspect.
Yeah.
There are other cities like Atlanta and Indianapolis that say, hey, construction's good. We want a growing city, but you can't block lanes during rush hour. So they have say where you can't block lanes or whole streets from 6 to 8 in the morning and from 4 to 6 in the afternoon.
That's pretty basic.
It's a simple idea.
Now I think you could argue, well, sometimes we have heavy equipment, we can't just move it willy-nilly during rush hour. But I mean, that just seems so common sense. You can block it. It's like a lot of times the state, when they do major road construction or highway construction, oftentimes if you're driving late at night, or I sometimes see them just as they're breaking down, they do it in the middle of the night when there's not much traffic, which is smart.
Absolutely.
They're not doing this construction unless it's an emergency during rush hour, which is stupid. So, I mean, that just seems common sense to me.
Absolutely. We want them to be able to be safe, to block a lane, to make sure that, you know, you don't have cars driving right along workers, right? But obviously people got to get to work in the morning. We just want to make sure that the effects of that construction are mitigated as much as reasonably possible. But then going on to your next point about corporate welfare, that is something that Beacon has been very outspoken about. Congestion is a cost on everyone. Now, the beauty is you'd rather live in a city that has some traffic than none. Nobody wants to live in a ghost town because that means there's no economic opportunity or jobs there. But it shouldn't be the government's responsibility to subsidize that cost on others, on the backs of others, because you're imposing that cost. We shouldn't be paying, you know, millions of dollars for companies to move, like Bridgestone, for example, from one part of the county to downtown and making the downtown traffic worse. That's not a responsible role for the government to play. Obviously, we want jobs and opportunity, but traffic is a cost. If you look at AllianceBernstein that recently announced that they were moving to Nashville, one of the reasons why they said that they were moving to Nashville is because compared to New York, the traffic is a lot better here. But then they said that they're going to be getting $17.5 million even after they announced that they were moving to Nashville. We shouldn't be subsidizing that cost on other people.
I agree. I mean, I just don't get that to some degree. All right, we can talk more on that. We've got more calls coming in. The number is 737-7587 as we're talking about other options right now proposed by the Beacon Center just with regard to easing traffic in Nashville now that we don't have a big plan that passed that's in the books. We'll go over more of these points and maybe more of your thoughts. If you're on hold, stay there. We'll get to you right after this.
The storm